Here, to my children. Dad lifted his glass over the Father's Day table, and every conversation in the backyard stopped. Marcus, I couldn't be prouder of you. New SUV, great career, you've done well. He turned toward my younger sister. And Vanessa, you're finally building the kind of life this family can be proud of. Then his eyes landed on me. His smile disappeared. I'm proud of all my children, he paused deliberately, except the disgrace sitting at this table. Nobody laughed. That would almost have been easier. Marcus stared into his drink. Vanessa suddenly became fascinated with her plate. My aunt shifted uncomfortably, while Mom whispered, Richard, you've been drinking. Not stop asterisk. Not asterisk, don't speak to our daughter like that. Just an excuse. I looked straight at Dad. What exactly makes me a disgrace? You're 32, Sonia. No husband. You never tell anyone what you're doing with your career. Your brother and sister actually have something to show for their lives. He leaned back like the verdict had been delivered. Normally, I would have swallowed it. This time, I reached into my handbag and pulled out the envelope. Dad's eyes followed it. Well, he chuckled, maybe my disgrace finally bought her father something worthwhile. I placed the envelope beside his plate. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Then I stood up. Sonia, Mom warned softly. I pushed my chair in. Enjoy lunch. Dad gave a dismissive laugh behind me, clearly expecting me to come back once I'd calmed down. For years, that was how it worked. He compared me to Marcus and Vanessa. I stayed quiet, and everyone pretended silence meant peace. But as I crossed the backyard, I heard Vanessa say, Dad, that was unnecessary. Don't start, he snapped. Someone needed to tell her the truth. My hand trembled when I opened my car door. Sonia. Mom had followed me onto the porch. I didn't turn around. I started the engine and pulled away. Inside that backyard, Dad left my envelope untouched for several minutes, apparently enjoying the attention more than whatever gift he thought I'd brought him. Then, according to Marcus later, he picked it up. Let's see what she got me. He tore it open. I was barely at the end of the street when I heard something behind me. A scream. Sonia. It was so loud, I could hear Dad through my closed windows. In my rearview mirror, 2 neighbors were already stepping outside, looking toward my parents' backyard. Dad screamed my name again. I kept driving, because there was no Father's Day card inside that envelope. And whatever he had just read had turned the man who humiliated me in front of everyone into the one person at that table who was suddenly terrified. What exactly had I put inside that envelope? 4 days before Father's Day, Dad called me at 7:14 in the morning. I knew what he wanted before I answered. Sonia, I need you to handle something. No hello, no asking how I was. How much? He hesitated. $4,700, mortgage shortage, property tax installment, and insurance. I opened my banking app, but didn't transfer anything. For almost 4 years, these emergencies had kept coming. After Dad's business collapsed, the first request had been temporary. Then came another. And another. Each time, Dad said the same thing. Don't mention this to Marcus or Vanessa. They don't need to worry about adult problems. I'd agreed because the alternative terrified me. My parents losing the house we'd grown up in. While I was still staring at the unpaid request, Dad changed the subject. Did you hear Marcus bought himself that new SUV? That boy knows how to move forward. I heard. And Vanessa's doing wonderfully. She's finally making this family look successful. I waited. He never asked about me. Instead, I said, Dad, when are you going to start paying me back? Silence. Then his voice hardened. After everything I spent raising you, you're keeping score. I walked to my desk and opened the private ledger I'd maintained since his requests became regular. The total at the bottom made me stare twice. $186,000. This isn't keeping score, I said. It's $186,000. You know I'll repay you. I pulled open another folder. Inside was the repayment agreement Dad had signed after the advances became substantial. At the time, he'd waved it away as paperwork. A formality. Dad, I can't keep doing this indefinitely. His answer came instantly. Family doesn't abandon family, Sonia. My fingers stopped on the agreement. Family doesn't abandon family. 4 days later, that same man would call me a disgrace in front of everyone. But sitting there that morning, I didn't know that yet. What I did know was that something had changed. I closed the banking app without sending the $4,700. Then I found the number of the attorney who had prepared our agreement. What happens, I asked when he answered, if I formally stop advancing my father money? He explained the process. I listened without interrupting. The next morning, I called him back. Prepare the notice, I said. I'll deliver it myself on Father's Day. Sonia. Dad's scream tore across the backyard seconds after he opened my envelope. By then, I was already driving away. Back at the table, the smug expression he'd worn while humiliating me was gone. According to Marcus, Dad read the first page twice. Then he shoved his chair backward so hard it scraped across the patio. What the hell did she do? He rushed toward the driveway, still clutching the papers. Sonia, get back here. 2 neighbors appeared near their fences. Marcus stood. Dad, what is that? She's trying to take my house. Dad grabbed his phone and called me. I declined. He called again. Declined. Marcus picked up the pages Dad had dropped on the table. At first, he thought they were legal notices. Then he saw the payment statement. Mortgage shortfall. Property taxes. Insurance. Emergency household expenses. Transfer after transfer had the same name beside them. Sonia Carter. Marcus looked up. These came from Sonia. Dad reached for the papers. Give me that. Marcus pulled them back. Vanessa moved beside him and scanned the pages. Her face changed. Dad, how long has she been paying this? Mom finally spoke. Sonia has helped occasionally. Marcus reached the final page. Occasionally. He pointed at the total. Mom, this says $186,000. The backyard went silent. Dad had spent years telling everyone he'd recovered from his failed business. He hosted holidays in that oversized house, talked about Marcus's success, praised Vanessa's career, and treated me like I had nothing worth mentioning. Now the numbers were sitting on the same table where he'd called me a disgrace. She planned this, Dad snapped. She waited until Father's Day to humiliate me. Marcus stared at him. You opened it in front of everybody. Dad ignored him and started typing. Seconds later, my phone lit up with the family group chat. Dad, Sonia is threatening to make her own parents homeless. More messages followed. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I opened one document on my phone and uploaded it to the group. The signed repayment agreement. Dad's signature was clearly visible at the bottom. Back in the backyard, Marcus enlarged the page and read it. Then he slowly raised his eyes toward our father. Dad, you signed this. Dad said nothing. Marcus placed the phone on the table between them. So why did you tell us Sonia was the failure? The next morning, Dad showed up at my apartment building before 8. I saw him through the lobby doors, packing beside the reception area with his phone clenched in one hand. The moment I stepped out of the elevator, he came toward me. You're withdrawing that notice today. No. His step stopped. Dad wasn't accustomed to hearing that word from me. You don't understand what you're doing, Sonia. I understand exactly what I'm doing. That money was family support. You can't suddenly pretend it was debt because you're angry about yesterday. I opened the folder I'd brought downstairs. Then why did you sign this? I placed a copy of the repayment agreement on the lobby table, followed by the bank records. His eyes dropped to his own signature. The anger in his face began changing into something else. Fear. The agreement was simple. Once I stopped making further advances, Dad could refinance and repay what he owed according to its terms. If he couldn't, he could sell the house and settle the balance from the proceeds. I'm not evicting you, I said. I don't own your house. I'm stopping the payments that have allowed you to keep living in it. His jaw tightened. You promised nobody else needed to know. You told me Marcus and Vanessa shouldn't have to worry. They shouldn't. I finally understood. That wasn't why you wanted it secret, was it? He looked away. For 4 years, Dad had presented himself as financially recovered while privately calling me whenever the mortgage, taxes, or insurance came due. The daughter he treated like a disappointment was protecting the image that allowed him to keep treating her like one. Then he reached for the weapon that had worked on me for years. Your mother will lose her home because of you. I closed the folder. You had 4 years to downsize. I asked you more than once. This is family. And I financed this family for 4 years. He stepped closer. When everyone hears what you're doing, they'll choose my side. He walked out before I could answer. I watched him disappear through the doors, then turned toward the elevator. My phone rang. Marcus. I answered. Sonia, don't hang up. Something in his voice stopped me. I went through the old family messages last night, he said. Every time Dad was telling us you were struggling, every time he mocked your job or said you couldn't manage your life, I checked the dates. My grip tightened around the phone. What about them? They matched the periods when you were sending him the most money. The elevator doors opened. I didn't move. Then Marcus said quietly, Sonia, there's something Dad has been telling everyone about you, and you need to hear it. What has he been telling them? Marcus went quiet for a second. That you're broke, Sonia, that you can't manage money. He's been telling relatives that he helps you. I leaned against the lobby wall. Suddenly, years of awkward looks made sense. Dad hadn't merely hidden the money I gave him. He had reversed the story. That afternoon, I sent Marcus and Vanessa the complete payment history. Not selected screenshots, everything. 4 years of transfers totaling *186,000*. The signed repayment agreement. Records of mortgage shortfalls, taxes, insurance, and emergency expenses. Even messages where I'd repeatedly suggested Mom and Dad downsize before their expenses became impossible to maintain. Dad had always refused. The house was part of the image. A few days later, we met at my parents' home. Marcus placed the records on the dining table. Explain something to me, he said. Why was the child you respected the least the one you depended on the most? Dad's face hardened. I don't owe you an explanation. Vanessa shook her head. You made us think Sonia needed you. I was protecting this family. From what? I asked. The truth. Mom sat beside him, twisting her hands together. Sonia, I should have said something on Father's Day. I looked at her. You should have said something long before Father's Day. Her eyes dropped. I kept asking you to ignore him because I wanted peace, and I knew you were helping us. I'm sorry. Vanessa looked at me next. I believed him, she admitted. That's why I didn't defend you. Dad pushed back from the table. This is ridiculous. Sonia deliberately put those documents in a Father's Day envelope to embarrass me. No, I said. He stopped. I planned to give you that envelope privately after lunch. You chose to call me a disgrace in front of everyone. Nobody interrupted. And you chose to open it in front of everyone. For once, Dad had nothing to say. And after that meeting, I sent him nothing else. No mortgage payment. No insurance money. No emergency transfer. when another household bill arrived. Dad applied to refinance the house, but his income wasn't enough to carry the existing mortgage and repay what he owed me. Within months, my parents put the house on the market. The same oversized home Dad had used as proof that he was still successful was sold. They moved into a smaller property they could actually afford, and the proceeds settled the outstanding balance according to our agreement. The consequences went beyond money. Marcus stopped accepting Dad's stories about me without questioning them. Vanessa apologized again and began rebuilding our relationship without comparisons between us. Several relatives who had stared at their plates during that Father's Day lunch contacted me privately. Some apologized. Others admitted they had believed I was the dependent daughter because Dad had repeated that version for years. Mom's apology took longer for me to accept. I needed changed behavior, not another promise made during a crisis. Eventually, she gave me that. Dad never truly apologized. Our relationship became distant, and I stopped trying to repair it by making myself smaller or by opening my bank account every time he needed rescuing. The following Father's Day, I wasn't sitting at his table. There was no envelope, no transfer, no expensive gift disguised as another financial rescue. I spent the afternoon peacefully, knowing Dad could criticize my life if he wanted. But he could no longer finance his own lifestyle with my money while pretending I was the failure. A year earlier, I would have done almost anything to hear him say he was proud of me. I didn't need that anymore. Because on the Father's Day, when Richard Carter called his daughter a disgrace in front of everyone, the envelope he opened proved something he had spent 4 years hiding. The daughter he was most ashamed of was the one who had been quietly holding his life together.